You're listening to the Training Talk podcast with Wattsie and DK. Dive into strength basics and elite endurance secrets. Whether you're just getting started or you're a seasoned athlete, this is the show for you. Join us each episode as we explore everything from training to wellness, nutrition, and much more. Let's get started.
Righto, welcome to the Training Talk podcasts with your hosts Wattsie and DK. This is a new adventure for both of us, a brand new endeavour, and one that we definitely have a lot of promise into, and we hope that the information and the stories that you hear on this podcast will help you guys out in your fitness and training, maybe personal growth endeavours as well. So what I'm going to do right now is introduce our co-host DK, and he might be able to drop a few points and tell us about who he is and what he's been doing and what's he been up to. So DK, welcome to the show, mate. Welcome to being a co-host on it, and let's see if we can make some tracks.
Thanks, Wattsie. Yeah, so most people probably know me from the ultra marathon running scene in Western Australia. I'm the race director of the 6-inch trail marathon, so most people know me from that. Before I started race directing, though, I was a very avid runner myself, and my career highlight was going to the Commonwealth Ultra Marathon Championships in Wales, where I ran the 24-hour race. So over there, I won the silver medal in the 24-hour race. My distance that I ran was 236.928 kilometres.
Jeez, that's good going. That's good going.
Yeah, so that still remains my PB and my best performance, I think. So that's an average of 6 minutes and 5 seconds per K for 24 hours. So it's it's not mucking around. There's not a lot of sitting around, changing clothes, going to the toilet. That's all included in that. So what about yourself, Wattsie? Tell us a bit about your training background.
So my training backgrounds, we've actually got sounds a bit like an octopus, really. You've got lots of tentacles on it, lots of different legs, but there's only a really couple things that I've started off with, and the main one that I thoroughly enjoyed the most, and this is what I always try to go back to, and that's running. When I was younger, I got into umpiring, and I did that for a number of years, and then I managed to make it up to state level football and start umpiring, Colts and reserves up there. But the other one is powerlifting as well, which is the strength sort of endeavour as well. And if you listen to that and you think running and powerlifting don't necessarily go together, they don't necessarily complement one another. I actually disagree with that. I reckon they do talk to one another, and they do complement each other. We can get into those details at a later point. But yeah, I'm also interested in bikes as well. So when I started off working as an apprentice at when I was doing my mechanical apprenticeship, my bosses at the time were avid MTB bike riders, and we went out for a few Ks with them as well, onto a few trails like Turner Hill down Dwelling Up, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. It gassed me out completely because I was using different muscles that I don't necessarily use while lifting or running. So that's pretty much my background into fitness, and I intend to keep going down that path. I mean, I did use powerlifting quite a bit for a couple of years there, but I just wanted to go back to my roots for a little bit and see if I could join all those things together. Hey, David, you mentioned your 6-inch trail race. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so if you're an ultra marathon runner in Western Australia, you probably know about the 6-inch trail marathon. We run the race from North Dandalup to Dwelling Up, and the race has been going ever since 2005. We started really small. There's a race in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales called the 6-foot trail or 6-foot track marathon.
Yeah, right.
And that runs from Katoomba, which is up in the Blue Mountains, to Jenolan Caves. And the reason why it's called the 6-foot track is the track was designed to be 6 foot wide, so 2 horses fully laden could pass each other. So it's been around for forever.
Yep.
But yeah, I'd heard about that race for years. It was off road. At the time, I was doing mainly road running, and there wasn't a lot of trail running in WA at all. And the 6 foot being mass participation trail run really appealed to me. And then I was like, well, why can't we do something similar to that over here in WA? We've got plenty of tracks. We have the Bilberman track, which is a 1,000k trail from Perth to Albany, and also around this time, around 2005, they just started opening a few sections of the Mundabiddi mountain bike trail, which now also is about 1,000 k's from Perth to Albany. At the time, it was probably only in the 200 to 300k range. It was just Perth to Collie. The first segment opened in 2004, and so this was back in the back before Facebook. We had a couple of messenger groups going. There was Cool Runnings, which was an Australia-wide one, and there was the West Australian Marathon Club, which was a local WA one. And yeah, just chatting on those two message boards, we kind of found a few like-minded people who'd like to come and run from North Dandalup to Dwellingup on this new mountain bike trail, the Mundabiddi. And 7 of us rocked up very, very early, 4:15 a.m. On a December morning for kicking off at first light to try and run to Dwellingup.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, you've told me about that lots, and it's always something I've also looked into, and obviously injuries got in the way, and I haven't been able to slap a solid pre-season or any solid training blocks to be able to do that sort of thing. But that's actually quite inspirational. In actual fact, that's very inspirational, adding on to your Wales adventure as well. Just leading to that next point as well, and I think this talks to what you were just talking about, and that's coaching. So you've come away a little bit from the actual competing space, and you've turned more into coaching. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the coaching journey kind of started fairly naturally. People just approached me as they were getting into ultra running, just wanting to have a few tips and a bit of advice. Was quite interesting when I first started ultra running. There was almost nothing on the internet how to train for an ultra. There's heaps of information of how to train for marathons and shorter stuff, and there's books in the library. So I started reading training books in the school and the town library when I was still in primary school, like how to train for running shorter distances. But in the ultra marathon sphere, there was very little. So yeah, a lot of the time people would just come to you face to face and ask like, hey, could you give us a hand with my training, because we see you've done a lot of different events and we're just starting out and we don't really know how to go about it. So so I started off fairly naturally that way. And then I met, when I was in Wales, I met Brendan Davies, who was on the trail team. So we had 3 different events at the Commonwealth Mountain and Ultra Trail Running Championships in Wales. So we had the 24-hour race, which I was part of. We also had a mountain race, which is, I believe at the time the distances were 12k up and down for men and 8k up and down for women. And we also had a trail race, which was a bit of a random distance, and I think they chose 56k for that first championship. And Brendan was on the trail team. He finished 4th there, and so we met there. A couple of years later, he decided to use his name as Australia's top ultra marathon runner, and to start doing a bit of coaching himself. So he'd been a school teacher, so he had a lot of background with helping people and teaching, and coaching is a form of teaching. So yeah, he started a very successful training group in the foothills down in Penrith, and then he wanted to do a bit more online. So he brought in some coaches from around Australia, and I happened to be his West Australian choice, which was cool, and still work for Brendan with Up Coaching.
Wow, that's actually quite amazing. You actually carry a bit of a resume behind you, don't you?
Thanks, mate.
It's good. Just also got down here is the journey, your journey into your ultra distance and your running. I've heard it personally, and it's quite of an inspiring one. But I think before we get into that, I think Dave wants to have a chat.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you a question, mate. Like, you've told me you love running, but you also love lifting, and you're really an aspiring hybrid athlete. We've probably seen the videos of Ryan Hall as a guy who was a Olympic marathoner, and he started doing a bit with the weights and the hybrid athlete journey. Tell us a bit about that.
So my journey into fitness is actually, or into hybrid athlete, or the hybrid journey, it actually started when I was really young, and I didn't really understand that it was hybrid at the start. Like when I was running, or before I started running, I actually played footy, and I only lasted maybe 3 games because I was weak. I didn't actually have much muscle on me. I actually didn't have anything, any strength, so I could last a quarter. I couldn't actually run too far without getting injured, so I needed to get into the gym, and I spent 3 to 4 days a week in the gym, and I started doing squats and bench presses and deadlifts and all that sort of thing. But also the component of running as well. Like as I grew stronger in the gym, I found I was actually able to last longer on in my running endeavors, and it was in season 2009 or season 2010. I was an umpire, and the more I lifted, the more resistance training that I'd done, the better of an umpire I became, the better runner I became, and I was actually able to run over 10Ks and up to 15Ks, and I think the best distance I did at that point in time in my life was about 25K. I didn't really have much of a requirement to run any further than that, simply because the umpire fraternity didn't really have much of a requirement to last longer than 20 to 25Ks. But the good thing about lifting is I was actually able to remain injury-free pretty much that whole season. The demand on my body at the time when I was, I think it was 17, 18, obviously naturally being younger, you're able to deal with more, you'd actually be able to deal with more load, more volume and whatnot. So it started back there, but over the years I kind of left running and I kind of left weight training, and I put on a significant amount of weight over that period of time, and it was just over the last number, probably 7 or 8 years, where I thought to myself I really wanted to get into lifting again. I did my personal training course, and what that's done is that's highlighted the importance of good strength training, good proper planned strength and resistance training, as well as good proper planned cardiovascular activity. Now, I was able, or what I didn't do, and I should have done, but in hindsight it's a wonderful thing, but what I didn't do is I didn't focus on one. I didn't focus on both at the same time. I focused on one or the other. And the more I ran, the weaker I became, the more injury prone I got. But when I went into the strength side of things, the more unfit I got, and the more easily I was gassed. And so I thought over the years, there has to be a way where I can sort of do both of those things, like lift heavy, be strong, as well as being able to run a significant distance, being more than 5Ks. And so in 2017, I started powerlifting on an unofficial point of view, but got strong through that. I had a few coaches doing that point of view. I had a few coaches doing that, and I got strong. But then after that, I gave up because, we can dive into this in another time, but where you talk about points of view in, the different worlds of exercise, like being powerlifting or endurance, they don't necessarily talk to one another. So I went into running, and I was actually able to do quite well. So I was actually able to do quite well, and it ended up into a race just only a few months ago, doing the trail marathon. I just forgot the name of it.
The Salak Hill.
The Lark Hill, that's right.
Yeah.
Lark Hill 25K Party Ultra. I died in that one. So that's pretty much my journey into hybrid activity. And it's one thing that I'm definitely going to be going further in. So, yeah. And so thanks for asking me that question, because it's actually quite thought-provoking, those sort of things. Like, the more you think about those sort of things, actually the more chance you have to just like go off on tangents. But let's bring it back a little bit. And so, yeah, just want to touch base with your journey. How did you get into what you're doing?
Yeah, actually started off, running on the roads. So, I'd done a bit of running as a kid, and then the Sydney Olympics came around. I got inspired, like I think a lot of people did, and decided because I'd done a lot of running as a kid, I actually went out and my first run was 8K. So, I remember running down the road. I wasn't wearing shoes. I was running down the verge, and was spring, September, and I trod on a prickle weed, and I sat down on this lawn and was pulling prickles out of my foot, going like I'm 500 meters from home. Do I just turn around and like walk or run home, or do I carry on and do this like 8K run that I had planned? And I probably spent about 60 seconds pulling prickles out of my foot, and then I headed off. And so from that moment, I kind of got into road running, and ran with WA Marathon Club. My favourite distance at the time was probably the half marathon. I probably built up to a half marathon over the course of about a year. I did some 5 and 10Ks before that. Then I got into triathlon. Mandurah, where I'm from, has a really good triathlon club, like a nice little community down there. And there's not a lot in the way of like a running community, standalone running community. I got into triathlon. I never really got like heavily into it. It was kind of my summer sport. So I would I'd train 2 or 3 of the sports year round, but usually only 2. Just alternating between whether I did a bit of swimming or a bit of cycling on top of my running. And and then in the summer I'd kind of piece all 3 together and do the local races, which were generally only about 40 minutes. But they were a good bit of cross training, a bit of fun. And then I got into umpiring, where I met you. 2003 was my first year umpiring, and just went down to the Peel Umpires Club, and there were a few runners that I knew that were down there. So it was very competitive at the top level there in umpiring.
Because I think the first time we actually ran together was actually at a Waffle Colts. It was actually at a Waffle Colts game.
Yeah.
Now that was pretty hectic. Talk about competitiveness.
Yeah. So I think I umpired for 4 years. So moved up from the Peel comp up into the Waffle, and did a couple of grand finals umpiring, running the boundary in the Waffle in a state game, and then got into trail running around about the same time. Yeah,
I was going to say just before, you were starting to get looked at for AFL selection, weren't you?
Yeah, definitely. It was. Yeah, I was kind of probably the next cab off the rank. I mean, I won the Umpire of the Year a couple of times, so generally that would be the person who was looked at as far as if there were any availabilities on the AFL panel to do that. So
you'd have been running with like Doigid and Heppenstall and all those guys at that time.
Yeah, I think probably
a little bit earlier than that.
Definitely with Doigy, yeah. We had I remember the infamous Ben Cousins booze bus story broke in the newspaper, and that was one of the that was my only real kind of AFL game. We did a pre-season game. It was Eagles intra-club match, and so they brought me in to do that with the AFL guys. I think they had 4 umpire system.
Yeah.
And so Cousins was umpiring. Sorry, not umpiring. He was captaining one team, and Chris Judd was captaining the other team.
Those 2,
yeah,
incredible.
And and it was funny because they were giving Cuz a bit of stick because the West Australian had just published his the story about him running away from a booze bus.
I remember that. I remember that. Yep.
So that was the only AFL game I did, but it was very close. Knew those AFL guys quite well. So 2005, I just umpired a year of league up at Waffle, and I'd done the reserves grand final, and I was thinking, I need something to kind of inspire me for training through the summer period, and so that's where the 6-inch trail marathon came about. I was looking for something I could train towards in the off season, and that's where I found that, and trail running as well. So from there, because it's actually a funny story, but because 6-inch was longer than a marathon, I wasn't really particularly looking for anything that was longer than a marathon. I just happened to be out on a training run near Goldmine Hill, the start of the 6-inch, and stumbled upon the Mundabiddi in the kind of half light as it was getting dark, and I was like, oh wow, that's really close to home, and then I got the maps and measured the course and realised, well, it was over a marathon, so it's like that's kind of where the name came from as well. So it was 46k, and the 6 foot track race is 45k. So 6 foot's a little bit hillier than the 6-inch. So I thought, going to be running similar times to what those guys are. So it's a very sort of similar course, both point to point as well.
It's amazing how life works. It's like, if you're not looking for it, you're going to stumble across the best thing ever. Yeah,
so it was then we'd already been chatting on the message boards about like doing this trail run, and we're thinking probably of something about 30k, maybe a marathon, but because the 6-inch was longer than a marathon, it became an ultra marathon, even though it was only like 4 or 5k's longer, and
still an ultra.
But the funny thing is, because it was an ultra, the local ultra running magazine found out about it, and they asked me to write up an article for them. So I wrote up a little article and sent that off to the editor of the Ultra Mag, and he published it. And small things can change your life, but because it was a members only magazine, I decided I'd sign up to be a member of the Australian Ultra Running Association, or AURA, and that was like 2000, beginning of 2006. So I've been a member of AURA for nearly 20 years now.
Wow, that's good going. That's good going for sure.
Wattsie, you tell us a little bit about that first trail race you mentioned, the Lark Hill. How did you find that? Like, it's 25k. You said you're probably running similar distances when you were young and really fit with umpiring, but you'd put on a fair bit of muscle from your powerlifting career. Tell us a bit about that race.
Well, I went home in an ambulance.
Wow, that's always a good way to finish a run.
Oh, no, not really. I didn't actually end up in an ambulance, but it sure felt like it when I got home. So that race was only March 2nd this year. And I'd put together 6 solid months of training, and I felt amazing, and it was going to be the best, and the best run I've done, and probably the longest distance I would have ran since 10 years ago. What? A little bit of a technical glitch. We'll be right back. So that was about 10 years ago when I was running. But back when I was running, I was weighing a hefty 66 kilo. I went to America. I done other bits and pieces. I wasn't necessarily looking after myself per se. And then I ran that race. at 103.3 kilos. So I was probably the heaviest guy on the track.
Yeah, so it's a long way to carry over 100 kegs to carry it. 25k.
It was 1 foot in front of the other type thing. I was aiming for a time of about 3.5 hours to do that 25k, or 26.1 kilometers was the actual track distance. I think the lap is a 8 by 3 kilometer laps. But at the start you had to run a 1 kilometer thing. But I thought, within the first 4, I thought, this is going to be amazing. I'm gonna hit the PB. I'm gonna it's going to be the best run I've ever done. But as soon as night fell, because I wasn't used to running in, at night time in cooler temperatures, my body wasn't necessarily prepared for that. And I had a nutrition plan going in. And I thought, okay, I'm going to, every time I finish my loop, my 3K loop, I'm going to have maybe a 2 or 3 minute break and drink some Gatorade, eat some chips, sandwich, whatever, just to get some energy back into me. But naturally, I just kept seeing runner after runner after runner. I thought, nah, I've got to get back out there. So it's like you had that energy of the other runners, like it's kind of taking you away from, your structure, your plan for the run. And so what I did is, instead of waiting 3 minutes, I thought that was too long. So after 90 seconds, I'd go off and I wouldn't be fully recovered. And as of about lap 5, the night started to fall and people started overtaking me, and I started getting really heavy in the legs, and I felt like I was actually coming down with the flu. Like, this is how much load that went through my body at the time. Like, I was overreaching for sure. But most of the other runs, like the 20 plus Ks, 23, 24, 25K train runs I did the weeks prior, I was doing it like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So I never actually trained. I actually never trained in the dark, where I probably should have. And I didn't actually eat much before or out of the whole day. So there was another rookie mistake. I didn't feel correctly in the days leading up to it, which again, I should have. But I managed to finish the race second last.
Yep. So
I don't think you were there, because I know you ran the race with me, but you weren't there by the time that wrapped up. I think you completed the race in half the time that I did. And so as I was coming across that last line, I was saying, please not last, please not last, please not last, please not last. And I asked the guy, I said, am I last? Because no, you're second last. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. It's cool. So collected my medal and went home happy as anything, because I didn't finish last. But yeah, it's that point, like I put myself into a world of hurt in that race. And it is something that I don't want to do again, but I do want to do again. So this is where my interest in running goes. But over the last few months, I developed a bit of a foot injury, so that the hurt locker has to be postponed a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's funny, like the little motivational strategies we have for ourselves. Like, I remember when I first started road running, one of the guys I train with, him and I were always around about the same time as the first female. So we used to kind of, if you beat the first female, you'd say first female. If you finished just behind her, but in front of the second female, you'd say that you finished second female. So, we weren't obviously, we weren't winning the races outright, but we were kind of racing the first ladies.
Absolutely.
So, that was our little thing we used to motivate ourselves when I first started road running.
Yeah, I think I didn't really have anything to motivate myself. But one thing I definitely did use to motivate myself through that race was David Goggins.
Well, I think like you said, just not wanting to be last was probably motivation enough, and something you could kind of hang your hat on when you when you got home. It's like, I wasn't last. So yeah, I guess the goal next time is just to try and run a bit faster, beat your time.
Absolutely. I just wanted to touch base. I know this is a new thing for both of us, but particularly yourself. You wanted to get into the podcast space, and we essentially found each other with this idea. So why did you want to do a podcast?
Yeah, there's probably 3 reasons like why I think a podcast is a good idea. So I've been running now since 2000, so 24 years, coming up 24 years. Also did a bit as a kid as well. So I feel like I've got a lot of knowledge that I can pass on to people. So when I first started, I read a lot of books, talked to a few older people, and kind of winged it as well. So I think one of the big mistakes I made when I first got into running was just doing too much fast running. I would run 4-minute Ks or quicker every run.
So you'd run without a governor, essentially?
Yeah, pretty much. I'd be like a dog let loose out of their cage.
Like they always do, yeah.
And and so that was one of the mistakes I made, and I think there's a lot of mistakes you can make. And so I just want to be able to share my knowledge. The other thing is, I just want to be able to provide some entertainment. So if you're going for a long run on the weekend, heading out for an hour or 2 or 3 or more, I just want to give something some entertainment that you can take with you, add to your podcast playlist, and just provide some entertainment that way. And finally, the last thing was just to talk about the history of ultra running and trail running in Western Australia and Australia, and even around the world as well. Just because I've been involved for like 20 years now, I know a lot of the history about the sport here, and it's amazing how many people have come and gone over the years. Just even thinking back to my best race, that was 13 years ago now. So a lot of people that were in the sport then aren't in the sport now. A lot of people that are in the sport now don't really know about my own running career. And they don't know about the days when like there was only 2 ultra marathons in WA. So back in, I think we had 3 when I started, and we lost one of the events, the Bunbury 6 and 12 hour race. So from 2000 and from 8, we only had the 2 races. So one was the Bunbury 50K, which was just an extra little 8K out and back at the end of the marathon if you're feeling super keen.
Yeah.
And the other one was the Perth 40 miler, which is no longer with us because that was a great event, but now we have like 20 ultra marathons in WA, so it just wasn't getting the same participation numbers that it required. It was 40 mile is kind of interesting race. Like it's something that I really enjoy because it's basically a road run on trail. It's very flat.
Yeah,
it's not technical, so it's a fast run, but it's on a softer surface. So I don't like running on the road really at all.
No.
And
it's probably how I got my injury.
Yeah, and it's not a technical slow run. So you'll be at the front of the field. They'll be running 5-minute Ks for the 64K or quicker. So in a way it's the best of both worlds, but in a way it's kind of the worst of both worlds. It's not a 50K or a 100K on the road where you can run a fast time.
Yeah.
And it's not a hilly ultra where you can go out and get a lot of vert, hilly hard trail race, which people enjoy. And
the dirt, vert and hurt.
Yeah, enjoy the scenery. It's back and forth along the same section of trail. It's not very aspiring. One of the great things about trail running is you go for a run and you kind of can't really see where you're going. On the 40 miler, at points you can see probably a K in front of you. So
yeah, right.
I guess best of both worlds, but also it's kind of like a hybrid bike in a way. Like it's not a great mountain bike and it's not very quick on the roads, but it kind of does a bit of both, but doesn't really do either. So it's a shame the 40 mile is not there because I love it, because that's the sort of running that I really enjoy. But most people are trail runners or road runners, and not a lot of them get into that kind of hybrid like you.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Yeah, hybrid. I guess like if you can like start your first section on road, then go into trail or vice versa. But because like when you run a road race or when you run a trail race, it's 2 different things. Like when you run road races, it's all about speed.
Yep. But
when you run trail race, it's all about just completing the race.
Yeah.
And not falling over and getting impaled by a tree branch or something like that. You know, that's probably more of a worst case scenario, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a bit about the powerlifting. So tell us. You did powerlifting and you competed in powerlifting for a while. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, powerlifting is a little bit of a either here nor there. I started actually powerlifting. I got a powerlifting coach back in 2019, and we trained solidly for about 18 months to 2 years, roughly around there, and it was just as COVID kicked off. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to get a big squat, big bench, and big deadlift. And over that time, we got there. My first powerlifting meet was the Tri-Nations bench, or can't exactly remember what it was, but push pull, that's right. And it was a bench press into a deadlift. There was no squat involved, and that was my first meet. And I think I got a third attempt of 180 kilos on the deadlift, and I think 92.5 kilos on the bench, which is, you know, in a whole world of powerlifting, it's really featherweight type thing. But it was significant to me because, you know, I'd not really done much of a specific preparation or planning for something like that. But I did that comp after about 6 months of preparation. It was a slow build, like anything, like in resistance training and building muscle. It's a slow build, and it's obviously you have to have a proper programmed approach to, you know, building strength and building resistance and all that sort of stuff. But then COVID started to really rain on us. So there was a couple of meets planned in, I think, April, May and June. There was a couple of novice meets I was trying to do. There was a APL at that time. There was a meet that I was trying to do there. But either my work got in the way, because at that time I was doing 2-on-1s. So I really had to rely on, you know, me being home for these meets. And pretty much over the 2 to 3 years that I was actually specifically powerlifting, I only managed to do 3 meets. And for one of them was that Tri-Nations push-pull. And the other one was a novice meet, which I can't exactly remember what weights I did there, but I did at about 104 kilos. And I finished last. And the third one was a Powerlifting Australia meet as well.
You need to do some powerlifting with ultra runners, and you might find that you're moving up the field a little bit. I don't think many ultra runners are deadlifting 180 kilos. Nah,
exactly right. And it's like, that could be my little feather in my cap. It's like, oh, see ya. As I drive past, as I run past them. But no, in all seriousness, I did enjoy powerlifting, but I found myself powerlifting for the wrong reasons. I was all over Instagram, posting my videos every week, you know, doing all this other stuff, and, you know, liking everyone else's videos just for the sake of liking it, so they could like my stuff back. But that's when the realization that powerlifting alone wasn't going to be what was going to propel me further into the fitness industry, and wasn't going to propel me for, you know, what I was going to continue up to do. So yeah, that's pretty much my powerlifting. But again, it is going to be a good part of or a foundational part of my training currently. I still use a lot of the programs and parameters, like the training, you know, the volumes and all that sort of stuff, percentages of 1 rep max and whatnot. So I've got a lot of you know, understanding and a lot of knowledge on that sort of thing. So Dave, I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yep.
And this is just to get to know who we are, why we're doing this podcast for, like what our aim is. So I'm going to start off with there's a couple of questions here. Just bear with me.
I got some questions for you too, mate. So yeah, if you like, you go first, and I'll have one waiting for you when I've answered your question.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so number one. So it was pretty much the first one I've written down. It was the first one that came to my mind, and that is, what was the most challenging thing or the most challenging part of being an ultra runner or as a coach? Like, what makes you tick? Like, what keeps you here?
Yeah, I guess I kind of two different questions. So I'll go with the first one. What was the most challenging thing about being an ultra runner? I think like my preferred distance, like the one that I really concentrated on and put my energy into was 24-hour running.
I want to cook myself with one of those ones.
And yeah, I guess it's not necessarily because that's what I enjoyed the most, but I just found that motivating. I I loved, I guess, probably coming from a road running background, I loved how the 24-hour was measurable. Like 6 inch is great, and 6 inch in a way is it's kind of like the City to Surf. Like the City to Surf was my big event when I was a road runner. It's like, all right, it's 12K, but the wind could be a headwind and the wind could be a tailwind, and it's a point-to-point race. So my best ever time was set into a headwind. I ran 42.59.
Into a headwind.
Into a headwind. So the following year could have been, I think it was either no wind or a tailwind. And I did run it slightly slower, but it was nowhere near as good a run because of the prevailing conditions. And I think with 6 inch and with City to Surf, you'd concentrate more on position because everybody that year had the same conditions. So I finished 21st that year, which I was a bit disappointed with because I was trying to crack that top 20.
Yeah.
And I had to tie a shoelace at about 8K. So 4 guys went past, and I think I caught 3 of them. So I was kind of missed out on the top 20. But with like a race like 6 inch, it's kind of similar. You some years it can be hot, some years it can be cool. So it's a race that you do for the position really. You try and beat those who are running in the same conditions as you are that year, and that's great and that's fun. But with 24-hour running, especially you're spending like the whole year as your focus race, like the good thing about it is it's measurable. So you're going in, you're going to try and run as far as you can in 24 hours on an easy course. And they did get pretty hard though.
Oh, for sure.
So I think the hardest thing with a 24-hour race is when things start to hurt earlier than you want them to. So I remember the last championship I did was a World Champs in Holland in 2013, and I trained way better or way harder than I'd ever trained before, and I definitely think I was fitter than I'd ever been before. Probably I'd done slightly too much in the last sort of taper period, the last month. I did a 50K, the Truth and Consequences 50K 3 weeks out, and I think I would normally do a 50K 3 weeks out, but probably not a race. And
those tapers are such an intricate part of preparation. It's incredible.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something I have a bit of a formula now that I use with my athletes, and maybe we'll talk about that another time. But
for sure, yep.
I'd probably trained a bit too hard, and I remember I got 4 hours in, and it was already like hurting, and I was like, realistically, it normally started hurting at about 3 hours, and so I'd probably got an hour further in before it started hurting, but I just thought, I was really fit. I'm fitter than I've ever been. It shouldn't be hurting so soon with 20 hours to go. And so it was really just a mental game. It's like, you need to stay positive to run a big distance in a 24-hour race. As soon as you have a negative period where you're down on yourself, then you can lose a lot of time. So I found just that mental side of the 24 just probably the most difficult. I think that's probably answers the question the best.
Yeah, exactly. And I strongly resonated with that last little part about that mental game side of thing, like going back to that race. It's that mental state was I really needed to lock in, and I kind of lost that edge at lap 5, and I even got emotional. Like, it's incredible. Like, if you lose yourself, you can actually get emotional, and it becomes a harder race to run than what it should be.
Yeah. I had a question for you, Wattsie. So you talked a little bit about your powerlifting comps you did. Could you just give us a brief overview of what a powerlifting comp looks like? I mean, I've only ever did very simple kind of athletic pursuits where you kind of run either from point A to point B, or you just run around in circles as far as you can in 24 hours. So, could you tell us about that?
Yeah, no worries, mate. So a powerlifting meet is generally goes for a whole day. Depends how many lifters actually on file or as they're going to start. And so what it is a competition of trying to hit your best numbers. So in a typical powerlifting meet, you've got your 3 lifts. So you've got your squat, then you got your bench, and into your deadlift being your last lift. And so over that time, you start with your first attempt of a squat. So let's say, for example, I'll say, okay, my first squat's going to be 140 kilos. So you'll go in there and you'll squat your 140. Obviously, you've got to perform that squat to competition standards. Hips below your knees, and also make sure that you don't do certain actions like you don't. I think if you go up and then you go back down, but you go back up again, it's good. No lift. So it's more so depth that my problems were. And what happens is if you complete the lift, the judges will score you with a red light or a white light. And if you got 3 white lights or you got 2 white lights and 1 red, you've passed the lift, you've completed the lift.
So it's probably similar to Olympic lifting, but you're just doing different lifts.
Pretty much, that's exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
And then like you get your second attempt, same rules, and your third attempt. But with all these lifts, you've got to follow specific competition rules for these lifts, and also particular, particular commands as well. Like they tell you when to squat and when to rack. Bench is a little bit more complicated. So you gotta, I think it's like unrack or press, rack and all these other commands. So you've got to do your lift in time of these commands, and pray that you hit the lift. And also the deadlift was pretty much, you carried out the deadlift when you were ready. And then once they've realized that you stop shaking, or, let's say if you're struggling your deadlift, and it's locked out up at the top, and then they'll just say, down, then you put your barbell down. And that you're pretty much on the platform for maybe 5 minutes in total for the whole day. You got 45 seconds, I think. I haven't powerlifted in a while, but I think you got like 45 seconds to go out there, execute the lift, and then complete it and get off before the next guy comes on and does his. That's pretty much how powerlifting meet goes. You got a lot of preparation in terms of the foods, coffee, caffeine, whatever else. I thoroughly loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed it because the meet event or the environment, the atmosphere really took it all to another level. Yeah. Like I've been to some really well prepared meets. My first meet was very well prepared. My novice meet was actually very well ran as well, at a particular gym in Perth. Great guys up there. They're still running around. I don't think they're doing meets anymore, so I'll never be lifting there again. But the third meet that I lifted at was a little bit less well prepared, but I think at that point I was starting to run down the slippery slope of powerlifting where I stopped focusing on that solely. But again, as I said, like I still use a lot of those parameters and a lot of those, like I still train like a powerlifter, but the jury's still out whether I'm actually going to do other meets yet or not. But I'm leaving everything open. Like my training at the minute is very generalist. Yeah. But that's pretty much what a hybrid athlete is. It's like you're pretty much a generalist, but when you're preparing for a particular event, that's when you become specialist. So it's like in omnia paratus, prepared in all things. Yeah. And so there's some great groups out there as well. So
I was actually bit of an observation on the powerlifting competition compared to ultra running. So the interesting thing is with ultra running, generally, like when I'm coaching people, I very rarely set them to do a long run longer than 3 hours. Yeah. So when they go out to do their event, they might be running all day, maybe 24 hours or so. If they're running as long as 24 hours, I'd probably give them some slightly longer ones. But they might be running all day, but they've only done 3 hours, and you're running a lot more on the actual competition day than you are in training. Yeah. Whereas I think with powerlifting, it's actually the opposite. So you're doing quite a lot of lifting in the gym in preparation, but then when you get to the actual competition day, I think I'm correct in saying it's like 9 by 45 seconds. You've
Pretty
got
much.
3 lifts for 3 different events.
Yeah.
And each time you're on stage for 45 seconds and even of that 45 seconds, you're actually probably only lifting for 15 maybe.
Yeah, 100% exactly right. And there'll be times as well, like if you get like really competitive and you're chasing gold, or if you're actually chasing a medal, you can become very strategic about your lifts. Like you can say, I'll skip my second rep and go straight for your third to save a bit of energy. I think you can do that. There's been a few people that I've noticed do that.
Yeah.
But don't hold me to it. I think you can do that, but in some cases you might you spend even less on the platform. But when I was training, I was generally spending roughly 2 hours a session or 2 hours a training day, and mixing that with FIFO. I was only getting 4.5 to 5 hours sleep on training days. But so the next one is it's actually quite bit more relaxing, a bit more personal. So what do you do to relax and unwind after a busy day of work or training?
Interesting question. Yeah, I think I do really like to surf. It's probably not something I do so much at the end of the day, although sometimes the conditions will allow it. But surfing is kind of an interesting thing. It's both exercise and relaxing. It's sort of in a very small way, a bit like powerlifting. A lot of time sitting around and then a few short, intense bursts of exercise.
Yeah, in powerlifting you need just a blanket and a deck chair. You're good.
And like we're kind of sitting out staring at the ocean for a couple of hours with 30-second sort of stretches of exercise sporadically mixed in between that. So I think that's the thing I really love to do to relax. And then also, I enjoy sitting down and watching videos of other people surfing. I enjoy kind of looking also at what other people have been doing on Strava and enjoy the running media side of things, keeping up to date with the sport internationally. Funnily enough, as a 24-hour runner, the thing that most interests me as far as spectating running is the 1,500 metres. So I keep a very close eye on both the men's and women's 1,500 metres, and Australia's very competitive at them. So, you'll find me after each Diamond League meet sitting down and catching up on those meets, skipping all the events except for the distance ones.
Yeah, that's it.
I got a question for you, Wattsie. So, finding out a little bit more about your weight training philosophy, like we talked about, how you train a lot more than what you do in competition.
Yeah.
I use deadlifts strategically for my running on a few occasions when I had access to a gym and the energy and dedication that I was focusing for things, particularly like I used them heading into Wales, my 24-hour PB. And also I used them when I ran my Bluff Knoll PB, which is kind of a niche sport that I enjoy. So what I used to do was I do 3 sets of 2 reps, and I do them progressively heavier and relatively heavy for me. So what about yourself? What's your weight training philosophy?
I never do more than 6 reps per set. Anything more than 6 reps, I consider it cardio. So there's my powerlifting mind coming out. But really what I'm trying to do at the minute is just look at the total volume of each movement. So, for example, this morning I did 2,040 kilos, which is 127 kilos for 4 reps by 4 sets.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of weight, a couple of ton.
Kind of, yeah. It was quite good, but what happens is over each week, and considering keeping in mind the hybrid approach I'm trying to achieve, I'm trying to increase the volume by almost the smallest of margins, where it's still going to be able to provide me great, benefit in terms of, in terms of progression. So you may have already heard a saying that you got to do the least amount of work possible to elicit the most change. So I'm trying to find that at the minute.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm trying to find what is the sweet spot for me in terms of volume, the weight, and where am I, the weight on the bar, for example, this morning, the deadlifter was 127.5. That was I think 75% of my current estimated 1 rep max. I mean, it's because I had a few years off, like I've lost a lot of strength, but it won't take that long to get back. But so, and what I try and do is with that is it goes across my 4 lifts, so deadlift, squat, bench, overhead press. But I guess what I'm trying to do is just gain overall strength over a long period of time. So start at a period where I'm only increasing by because at the moment I'm only increasing my volume by about 3 to 5% each week on those lifts.
Yeah, we have it's a rule that I read about in a running book like way back when I first started in the road running scene. 10% max of mileage increase week to week.
Yeah, because that's what you're trying to do. Is you're trying to sort of find out what you're able to recover from in a week. Because like if you're doing too much, it's gonna wreak havoc into your next week. Because you probably have to pull back volume or pull back your intensity. And that's what I try and put in a bit of cycling, zone 2 work.
Yeah,
So
right.
I try and keep my heart rate between specific, data or specific set. So I guess, that'd probably be another conversation that we do when you talk about the cardiovascular side of things. So that's the powerlifting, pardon me. The powerlifting is only a branch of what I'm trying to do. It's not the be all and end all.
Yeah.
It's what I'm trying to do overall, which, many hands make light work.
Yeah, I think probably the interesting thing for the runners like myself is, that powerlifting thing is very new to us. We're kind of, usually very, singularly focused on the running and that whole weights thing. If we're doing it, it's very much running specific. That's why thought it'd be quite interesting to talk about exactly your philosophy of how you're trying to make yourself really strong. Yeah,
and I guess that's what I'm trying to do, like help runners in particular. But getting stronger doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to put on weight. It's gonna, you're gonna create trauma to the muscle. It's gonna, create some growth if you eat, the right foods like enough protein. You're gonna build muscle, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna gain considerable size. And what that's also going to do specifically, more so squats and deadlifts, is going to help strengthen the tendons. It's going to help strengthen the muscles as well. So, which will obviously lead to less chance of injury. And, with running coming into powerlifting, it's going to help me recover more intraset. And where powerlifting helps you is you guys can recover faster, from one training session to another.
Yep.
So that's how we can sort of train these things concurrently. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do here with this podcast, is help people have a great good to great understanding of how these two can work together.
Yeah.
But also ask people how, what their experiences are, in whatever they're doing as well. So being a hybrid athlete is quite it's quite challenging. It's a new world for me. But I'm just going to finish off this. We're going to wrap it up here soon. And I want to finish off just one last question. It's kind of a bit of a lighter question. And I'm actually quite hungry at the minute thinking about this question. And, I'm going to go out for some lunch after this. But what are your favourite foods? And let's say, where do you want to go eat? Like when you and your wife go out. So what are your favourite places?
Yeah, okay. First of all, we don't really go out to eat very much at all.
Okay.
So my wife's not keen on eating out, and I'm fairly happy with that. I enjoy home cooked food, and I've kind of been down the vegetarian vegan lines, and still don't eat a lot of meat. Although I enjoy it, I just don't find it sits well in my body if I have it too regularly. So favorite place to go out and eat is the Dwelling Up Hotel in Dwelling Up. So yeah.
Wow.
Yes, that's one time we will kind of have in the calendar is the Sunday night after WTF every year to go out there.
Nice.
I love a good steak burger with chips. Can't beat that. But I got to feel like I've deserved it by doing a fair bit of exercise beforehand.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but other than that, day to day, probably eat meat a couple of days a week, and a lot of fruit and veggies, a lot of beans, and pretty high carb probably. Been off sugar and dairy this year. Been kind of keeping those very light. So that's probably my diet. I have one last question for you, Wattsie, and we'll wrap it up.
For sure.
And that is, what are you training for at the moment? So you said you've done a race and you're not looking at any powerlifting comps in the near future. So what are you training for?
So I'm going to quote again David Goggins. I listened to something. I listened to one of those motivational clips of him a few weeks ago, and something really resonated with me. And I don't actually have anything on the docket. I'm not actually training for anything in specific, in particular. But what I'm training for is myself. I'm just trying to get to a point where I'm physically strong enough where I can step on a platform within a few months.
Yeah.
I'm fit enough. I want to be fit enough that I could, let's say in 3 months, I can go run a race.
Yeah.
You do a 25, 50K, whatever it might be. At the moment, I'm injured, so I can't really do that. But also, I'm also trying to look into mountain bike, MTB type stuff, and look into the world of that, because I still want to be able to do something different as well, to powerlifting. Again, it's in conjunction. But I guess I just want to, pull my training right back to the point where I train for my mind. If I don't train, I'm pretty much useless as wet toilet paper. But I think if I can train my mind and, just be excited about just getting into the gym and lifting weights and executing nicely and, being happy that I'm progressing no matter what I do, I think that's what I'm truly preparing for. But I do have an event in mind, and that's going to be the 25K again next March, which is the Lark Hill Party Ultra as well. So that's, if anything, that's my goal, my event. But
that's cool. To go back and see if you can and do better than last time.
I just want to avoid calling the ambulance.
Well, Wattsie, it's been great kind of sitting down and getting to know you a bit today, and I'm hoping that everybody will enjoy our first episode, and we look forward to sharing with you each week or each fortnight as we move forward. So thanks for listening, everybody, and Wattsie, thanks for your time, and we'll catch you again soon.
No worries, guys. Thank you.